Good evening. This presentation is regarding project proposals for Quimby funded projects. What are Quimby funds? Quimby funds are derived from the Quimby Act. The goal of the Quimby Act is to require developers to mitigate impacts of construction of new homes by ensuring adequate open space. The Act authorizes cities and counties to pass ordinances that requires developers to set aside land for parks or pay fees for park improvements. Quimby funds can be used for park or recreational facilities to serve the subdivision or property from which they originated. If no park is designated in a particular neighborhood that has Quimby funds, funds can be used for adjacent neighborhood park, community park, or city park with findings that this serve residents of the subdivision from which the funds were collected. Are there restrictions on Quimby funds? Yes, there are. State law does not allow for Quimby funds to be used to offset costs, to purchase materials and supplies, or to replace equipment. For example, old, worn-out park equipment and fixtures such as water fountains, benches, and trash cans cannot be replaced using Quimby funds. Why do some parks have Quimby funds and others don't? Quimby funds are all derived from development. Usually, Quimby funds are collected when developers are constructing housing units. If a neighborhood is built out or does not have any current infill development, then Quimby funds will not be collected. These proposals focus on developing and installing walking paths and new lights or supplemental lights within parks. The 2021 Parks and Recreation Master Plan found that Oxnard residents believe there are too few trails and walking paths in the city. The plan reviewed 25 of the most heavily used parks throughout the city and found the majority of these parks had existing walking paths. Of these 14 that had existing walking paths, 8 had both walking paths and lights. The plan found that city residents requested more hiking paths and walking paths throughout the city. Benefits of walking paths? Well, it benefits public health. Walking has been proven to improve circulation, ward off heart disease, lower blood pressure, and strengthen the heart. It also increases the accessibility and inclusion throughout our parks. Now let's take a look at what neighborhoods have and don't have Quimby funds throughout the city. The map is broken up by neighborhood, and the purple shaded neighborhoods have funding within that neighborhood and also have an existing park. The areas shaded in orange have funding but do not have a park within their boundary. And the areas in gray do not have funding. Here we're showing parks that have existing walking paths throughout the entire city. And these include general fund, special districts, and Measure O funded parks. So this is all of the parks that have walking paths currently. Let's first start with our proposals for adding walking paths in neighborhoods that have Quimby funds. So we have 3 parks that fit these categories. Cabrillo Park, Eastwood Park, and Orchard Park can all benefit from adding an exercise or walking path. And these neighborhoods do have Quimby funds available. Now we're looking at adding new lights or supplementing existing lighting along walking paths throughout the city. So you can see the parks that are highlighted are the parks that are being proposed for additional lighting. And these are Connolly Park, Eastwood Park, Oxnard Beach Park, Oxnard Community Park West, South Winds Park, and Rio Lindo Park. And again, these are all within neighborhoods that have existing Quimby funds. Now let's take a look at neighborhoods that have Quimby funds, but do not have a park. So let's start with Pacific Avenue Commercial Neighborhood. The proposal is suggesting that these funds be used at the adjacent Beck Park for the construction of a walking path and supplementing lights along that path. Now, the project as a whole is more than the funding available from Pacific Avenue Commercial alone. So in the next slide, we'll talk about using a cost share from another neighborhood. But this is where this funding is proposed to go to. So here we have the Mar Vista neighborhood. And as I just mentioned, this is where we're suggesting to use the additional funds from Mar Vista to finish off the project at Beck Park, to construct a walking path with lights at College Estates Park. And you can see that both neighborhoods within these parks do not have available Quimby funds. And now we have 5 Points Northeast. And the funding here is proposed to go to where the proposed action is to construct a walking path with lights. Also, to add lights to Lathrop Park that has an existing walking path. So it's just lights at Lathrop. Now here we have in green, we've outlined all of the parks in which we have made recommendations. And these recommendations are for new path and lighting at College Estates Park, Beck Park, Pleasant Valley Park, and Eastwood Park. And then the proposed new paths at Orchard Park and Cabrillo Park. And then we have the proposal of new lighting for existing walking paths at Lathrop Park and Oxnard Beach Park. And lastly, supplemental lighting for existing walking paths at Connolly Park, South Winds Park, Rio Lindo Park, and Community Park West. And now here we have laid out all of our parks and proposals in one map. So you see the distribution. Here we have the parks that have existing walkways are in blue lines, and the proposals are the red lines. So you can see the distribution throughout the city of if all of our proposals went forward, then this would be the distribution throughout the city of parks with paths, some with lighting, some without. Now let's take a look at that same information in a different way. So here we're showing the existing parks that have, parks with existing walking paths on them. And again, the parks are highlighted in green. And then we have these distance bands of 1,000 feet. And these distance bands show, well, proximity or distance to this park. So the further away you get from the park, the lighter those bands get. And what we're seeing here is the light areas or whiter areas are gaps in the communities where we have less community access to these parks. So you can see that there's quite a few lighter areas spread out throughout the city. And in making these suggested proposals, we have taken that into account to try to spread out throughout the city more equitably the walking paths and access to these paths throughout the city. So if we now add, we can see that we filled in many of those gaps. And I will go back so you can take a look. This is what it is currently. And here are with all of our proposals. So this shows, again, if all of the proposed actions went through, these would be the parks that have walking paths. And you can see that there are very, very fewer gaps within this area, within the city, I should say. And it's pretty evenly spread out. So this is coming to the conclusion of our presentation. I just want to show you here, we have the available funding as of March 15th through all the neighborhoods, Quimby funding, I should say. And to note that the highlighted neighborhoods are areas within the city's 2020 to 2025 CIP. So they're already in CIP. Again, this is the conclusion of the presentation. Thank you very much.